I'm always flattered when people watch these videos. I'm also very flattered that people leave comments, and I'm incredibly flattered when people ask questions, especially kind of now when I asked if anyone had any questions. So thank you to everyone that left a question. If you don't actually, if you're watching this on YouTube, I actually do have an Instagram account under the same name, and I have a Facebook account under the same name as well. I do tend to put more photo stuff on the Instagram page and sort of the Facebook page when I remember. Yeah, so this time round, we've done this before, but this time round I also put some questions out on Instagram. So I have some from there, some from YouTube, and without sort of, I'm going to start with the YouTube question. So, right, so Brett Biggs, hello mate, how you doing? How about a review and demo of your XPK kit? Now, I actually did do, it wasn't really so much a review, it was kind of like a feature video really. But I did do a video on my XPK kit, or part of my XPK kit. I'm thinking probably around 2018. I think it was before my daughter was born. So, but that kind of was like it was a smaller version. Not that you can really have a small double bass kit. So that was actually a double bass kit that I set up, and I think it was 8, 10, 14, 16 with the two 22-inch kicks. Now, I have sort of said probably a few times in videos. Well, I remember saying it. Whether or not I've cut it out of the videos, it's never been published. But my Premier XPK kit was my first proper drum kit. It wasn't my first kit, but it was my first sort of proper one. And I bought that brand new. Well, actually, I bought most of it brand new in 1989. I've had it ever since, and I've added over the years. I added sort of in the initial few years. I actually added a couple more drums, and then more recently, I've also added some more drums. So now the whole kit runs 6, 8, 10, 12. 13, 14, 16, 18, two 22s, and a matching 14x5 snare. Now, I have always wanted to do a little sort of Nico McBrain-esque type setup with that kit, because obviously I have the drums to do it, really. I'm not going to mount the 16 over, like, you know, over here or anything as a mounted tom, but I have the mounting facility to do it. I've got enough stands and arms and things. I would very much love to do. I just wanted to do that type of setup for a long time, and I think given that this room kind of best sets it. I prefer the visual of the kit going that way towards the camera, but I think in practical sense, it makes more sense to have the kit facing the back wall, because I just get more space. So what I may do is, I wouldn't be able to do a front view of it particularly, but what I may do is get all the stands and stuff out and give it a crack. I have tried to do it in the past. If you're familiar with Nico's kit, he's got 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, with the 18 is the only one that's on the floor. But the angle that he has the toms, which is kind of like that, I don't find particularly comfortable, and also the height of the things as well. But I do want to give it a go. I generally sit quite low. Well, actually, I mean, that's a bit of a joke in itself. Nico sits lower than me. I've sat behind a couple of Nico's kits, and Nico actually sits lower than me, even though I've actually lifted my seat up recently as well. And you know, he sits even lower than I do now. But I will give that. I do want to do that. I think it'd be great fun. And it'll remind me the first time I ever sat behind. In fact, the first time I ever sat behind a proper drum kit, it was probably something not far off that. It was my friend's. It was a Premier concert tom kit. I've no idea what the series was, but I remember it was like 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 16 or something. All concert toms. And I remember sitting in the room, and my dad and my friend were sort of over at somewhere else. And I remember saying, "What do I play? But that was the first time, and my first time ever behind a drum kit was this huge thing. But I will do that, and I would like to get more of the drums out. It's still a great sounding kit. You know what? 32 years old this year, or most of it anyway. I've added a couple of bits over the years, and in fact more recently I've added a snare drum. I've added another 12 because the 12 I had originally was slightly off colour to the rest of the drums, so that I managed to pick up an orphan 12. It's one of those things you never see anything like that as orphan drums. And then of course right now I'm recording this at the end of February, and there's an orphan 12, 13 and 16 on eBay, and for quite cheap prices. But anyway, I will do that at some point in the future. It's just going to take a lot of time to actually work out the ergonomics and the logistics of getting all the stands out. But I will do that. That'll be great fun. So Sam West, hello mate, how are you doing? How many Craviotto snares stroke kits do you have? Can you show them all and talk about them? What's your rarest drum? I do love talking about Craviotto stuff, as may be evident because it comes up quite a lot. Right, so the last time I had all of my Craviotto drums out, I think again was before my daughter was born. So I think it was probably around the summer of 2018. Now, and in fact, here it is. So everything that you see in that photo, I still have, and everything in that photo at the time I took it was mine. But the kit on the, I think it's on the left, the natural finish kit, I had for a grand total of 1 week. There was a bit of a misunderstanding between me and the guy who owned it, or maybe miscommunication's probably nearer to it. It wasn't a misunderstanding as such. But yeah, I had that kit for a grand total of a week, and then I gave it back to him. Subsequently, I bought the Tama Star kit, actually, the Star Walnut kit, and to be fair, I kind of like that kit more anyway. The natural finish kit was 12, 14, an 18-inch bass drum, and a 22-inch bass drum. Now, admittedly, it burned me giving it back. It really did. Or it pained me to give it back. But because I was really looking forward to jamming on that 18-inch kick drum, and I think I did actually jam on it, but only for a couple of days. And then, as I said, I had to give it. Well, I did give it back. I didn't have to give it back, but yeah, everything else in there is I still have. So if you count them, there are 35 Craviotto snare drums in that photo, and I can say that because I haven't bought I haven't bought a Craviotto snare drum for a good few years. Probably 2017, I think, was the last time I bought one. Maybe even before that, actually. But and no particular reason. It was just an economics thing. Obviously, Craviotto stuff is not cheap, and it was just kind of like a turn in situations, circumstances, and to a degree interest as well. But I do still love the brand. I do still follow the brand. I still know people there who I do talk to. But yeah, I mean, I just kind of, it's like many things, you kind of just sort of move away. But as you will notice in that photo, there are mostly Craviotto branded drums. There are some DW badged Craviottos in there. Maybe two. I'm going to say there's two, maybe three DW branded. I know for certain that there's two. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure there is actually a third one in there. Technically, I also have another drum that was made by Johnny Craviotto, which I had for like an awful long time. Before I actually found out that it was Johnny that made it. So the drum itself is actually it's a Donette, and it's made of a wood called Ancient Kauri. That's Kauri. It's a New Zealand wood. Ancient Kauri. I mean, Kauri itself is a tree, and you can still get Kauri trees in New Zealand. Kauri trees have the ability to grow to incredibly thick, you know, and obviously tall as well. But some of the bodies of these trees grow to sort of like double figures in feet wide. And the ancient carry was carry that basically fell. I think it was in the last ice age. It's like 50,000-year-old wood. Basically, it's been carbon dated to 50,000 years old, and it fell into a bog. It was discovered in the north part of the North Island of New Zealand in 1987, and they've been sort of digging it up ever since, I think, really. And Ron Dennett actually, he did a run of 5 drums, 3 14 by 6.5s, and then there was like a 13 by, I think it was something like a 13 by 3, and then a 14 by 4, I think. And bizarrely, I bought some cymbals off someone up in Scotland, actually, and I've got a feeling I can remember which ones they were. But and he said, I couldn't remember, but I think we'd spoken before many years ago. But it turns out one of the other carries, one of the other 14 by 6.5s, is actually in Scotland. But yeah, I only found out that was made by Johnny Craviotto in, I think it was, again, probably about 2018, 2017, when Ron Dennett last came over to the London Drum Show. And I mentioned having this drum, and he confirmed it was actually made by Johnny. So, arguably, I have 36, but they're not all, they're all made. So, I mean, arguably, I have 36. The wood ones were all made by Johnny. The metal ones were made by either Adrian Kirschler or whoever makes the solitaires. But this 35, I count it as 35, and the one Dennett. So kits, I just have the one. As I said, I did have the other kit. In fact, both kits came from the same person. I have the one kit, which I actually had here recently. I had it all I had most of it set up except for the gong drum, which and it really bums me out that I just don't have the room to put the gong drum anywhere, because it kind of just sort of as a setup, and I'll put a picture up. I've done it a couple of times, but I've had the setup kind of a la Steve Jordan-esque type thing. Said I had the 13 in front of me. The 13. So actually, okay. So the kit runs 13 rack tom, 14 converted rack tom, so it's on legs, and a 16-inch floor tom. So I had 13, 14, 16. It's a 22 by, I think, 15, or maybe a 16-inch bass drum. And then I have the matching snare drum, which is the 13 by 7 with Yamaha wood hoops on it. But I also have an 18-inch gong drum with a 20-inch head, and I have a 16-inch head by 18-inch deep bass drum as well. So I kind of had it set up as as the two bass drums that they were, as it sort of stood, it was kind of set up like that, not like as you would have a double bass kit. So I could basically swing the stool around and have this little 2-piece kit thing going on, but I could still actually reach the kick drum pedal on the left without from the main kit as well. It was kind of fun. In fact, it was a lot of fun. To do it. I did set it up for something specific, which just drew through situation that I never actually. I was going to record it all and everything, and it just never happened in the end. I was just going to do record another couple of tunes in here, and it just never worked out that I had the time to do it. Because life and stuff got in the way, but I'll do that again at some point. I've never done a video with that. I've done a couple of videos where I was sat behind that kit, but I've never actually done a video when that whole thing's all plumbed in and mic'd up, and and I've sort of talked about it. But that's a. It's a great fun kit. I love that kit. I really do. I will cherish that Craviotto kit till the day I pop. But the snares, I think what I'll do, that's such a great question, and I think it's one of those things that I would end up talking. This video would be an awful lot longer if I talked about that. So what I'll do, Sam, is I'll do a separate video going over. I will still do, like I've done, I've previously done videos on a lot of the drums anyway. In fact, I'm still going to work out which ones I've done and which ones I haven't done, but I will do a separate video where I'll just slap that picture up on the screen and I'll talk about each one. And then one day I will carry on and do sound files and everything else as well. But so which one is my rarest drum? What's my rarest drum? Oh God, I'm going to read that both ways. So which one is my rarest Craviotto and which is my rarest drum, full stop. So my rarest Craviotto, you know what? That's a toughie. Right, so I've got a couple of Craviottos which were sort of like never catalogue items and things. I've got to my knowledge, there were 3 Bubinga drums made before they more recently did a run of Bubinga drums. But those later ones have all got private reserve badges on them, which is like the red badge. So those, I have 2 of the 3. For ages, years, the only time anyone ever mentioned Craviotto Bubinga drums on the internet, again to my knowledge, was what I put there, because I was the only person that had them. And then out of the blue, a very nice man, I think he was out in California, contacted me out of the blue and said, I have this drum and I've seen your video, and it turns out I think it's a 15 by 6.5, and so there is a 15 by 6.5. The one that I've got, well, the 2 that I've got are the 14 by 6.5s. The first 2 were, arguably like prototype drums. They've got the early round, the early oval Craviotto black badge, and it's like an unfinished shell with brass hardware and hoops and stuff. And I think, if I remember rightly, the 14 that I've got doesn't have any writing inside. The 15 actually has Elizabeth Cabrassa's name in it, and she was Johnny's business partner and still is now. I think Steve Maxwell took over, obviously, after Johnny passed, so she is still completely involved in the company. And if you watch a lot of Steve Maxwell's videos where he features the Craviotto stuff, you'll absolutely be familiar with her name, because you can see her name on some of the plaques on these special drums. And the other Bubinga I've got was funny enough, I mentioned very recently in one of my snare drum buying stories videos, that was the Nam centerpiece drum from, I want to say 2009. That was kind of like that was like a finished version. It had gold hardware, John Aldridge engraved hoops, like the gold knob on the trick strainer and stuff, and it was like the blinged out version, and the shell was all finished nicely as well and everything. But so I've got those. I've got a seafoam green seafoam green pearl cherry Craviotto as well, which I've never seen another one like it. I've seen a photo of Johnny leaning over it while it was on a table. As I said, I'm pretty sure. My knowledge is basically that Johnny apparently didn't really like to wrap drums that much. Now, obviously, he did wrap drums, because there are plenty of examples out there where that's the case. In fact, they have other drums that have been wrapped. But I think, as a rule, from what I understood, was he didn't really like to wrap drums. And to be fair, why would you when you're selecting some of the best wood around? But so I have that drum as well. That's a 14 by 6.5. I've got other bits and pieces, like the 10th anniversary AK. There was only 25 of those, and I mean that was actually the most expensive drum that I bought actually. I mean, extending that rarity thing out to the other drums. You know what? I've got some stuff that is kind of limited. I'd say, you know, stuff like the Ochiltree tree bronze. I mean, I don't know figures of those, but I mean, you don't see a lot of them. I know that they're probably floating around in people's collections and stuff, but the Peisty 2002 again. I mean, that. Although having said that, in 2021, we are what, 7 weeks into the year. I've already seen one come up for sale, and I saw 5. I think I saw 5 between 2019 and 2020 come up for sale. So I mean, I don't really know if that makes it that rare actually. I mean, I've got some other sort of more niche stuff. I've got some Provenance drums. They're kind of generally like ones. I've got a timeless. I've got 2 timeless timber Craviottos, but the 14 by 5.5 was a one of one. Because just basically Johnny kept I think he just basically kept the nicest boards that he had till sort of last. So that was one of the nicer ones that you could probably have bought. Oh dear. I mean, I don't know if these. I'm just like looking around trying to find some inspiration on the answer. It would probably be some of the Craviottos, to be honest. I mean, I think by virtue of the fact that, as I said, I've got stuff that didn't really sort of exist or was done in limited runs, where I've done Steve Maxwell did a couple of runs of Craviottos, like the tribute series that he talked about. Sorry, I mean, he has talked about them in video. He did a couple of, I think maybe 3 runs of tribute drums. So they were basically runs of 6 drums, but all of the drums were individually unique and badged and everything. So I stuff like that. It's a great question actually. I probably should have thought that one through. But that would be certainly some of the rarest ones anyway. So. Okay, Roy Beckerman, hello mate. Right, have you ever covered any of the Pearl Sensortone line? If so, how do you find the sound and quality? Right, so personally on here, no I haven't. I tend to go, the Pearl stuff that I have, I tend to have older Pearl stuff from sort of the 80s and the 90s. No particular reason for that other than that's just the era that I kind of like of Pearl stuff. Having said that, I do have some more modern Pearl stuff as well. I've got a Crystal Beat there, I've got a Tico Torres, you know, but it's just I generally get stuff from like the 80s and the 90s. But having said that, I'm pretty sure that I did review, and it'll have been deleted now. I did have some Sensortones many years ago, probably 15 years ago. I did them for MikeDelware.com, and I like them. I mean, they're great drums. I think the thing is the fact that the line has been around for as long as it has probably indicates that it is a popular line. I think really that the sort of the Sensortone line is kind of Pearl's take on like the Ludwig 400 type thing, you know, as you know many companies will do or have done the same basic type of thing. So I can't really specifically remember that much. Funnily enough, I do remember, one thing I do remember about getting those drums was they came directly from a British magazine. And I remember the other person that's been involved with MikeDelware.com actually even longer than me, and I've been doing it for 19 years this year. He was with me. I can't think of why he was with me now, but he was actually with me when I was looking over these drums, and one of them had basically been dropped, and it had landed on the lug and had dented the shell. So, you know, obviously it's supposed to be like that. It was like that. And I remember sort of pondering. This was very early on in my days of reviewing. That much I do remember. If that happened to me now, I probably wouldn't bat an eyelid. I'd just take a note, send a text, and go, right, okay, it's not my problem. I didn't do it, so therefore I'd have nothing to worry about. But it was a bit more of an issue for me at that point. But I remember that, you know, they were good drums. They really were. They're good drums. Would I buy any? I think if I was starting out, quite probably. But given the situation with what I have in here, it's not really something that I would need to look at covering. Yeah, because I've got brass drums, I've got steel drums, I've got aluminium drums. There's not really much cause for me to have any of them in here. But as I said, as far as I remember, they were great drums. Oh, and also the Tama Slp Fat Spruce. What do I think of that snare? I have one. I have one in the other room. It's a good drum. I seem to remember thinking it's got a nice body to it. As with pretty much all of the SLP line, they cut. In fact, actually, the SLP line is a wonderful other example of what I was talking about with the Sensitone line, because you know you look at these sort of drums. You know, if all the big manufacturers certainly have got a steel drum, they've got an aluminium drum, they've got the brass drum. They all kind of look the same. If you took the harder off, they would pretty much all look the same. They've got they've got the crimped sort of bent over edge, and they've got the bead in the middle. You know, and it's kind of like a bread and butter type design and concept, really, isn't it? But the SLP line, you know, for me, I've got a number of SLP drums. They all represent great value, and they're just great drums. And they're absolute living proof that you don't need to. Whilst it's always nice to have a drum that is expensive or flash in some way, at the end of the day, if you want a drum to go play down the local pub, the SLP line, Sensitones, that's kind of where you're at, really, isn't it? So, but yeah, the SLP Fat Spruce is a nice drum. As I said, I think visually it's a nice looking drum too. And obviously they did a kit out of that as well. But and I haven't tried the kit, but certainly that particular snare drum, I like it. And as I said, I seem to remember it being quite having a nice sort of body and crack to it. So yeah. Steve Orris, hello. Would you ever consider opening an online or physical drum shop? I think you would be quite great at buying and selling gear and knowing the value of gear. Other than that, is there a particular brand that tends to stand out above others, in which the quality and sounds stand out as superior? Well, thanks, mate. I appreciate that. Have I ever thought about opening a shop? No. Although people have thought that I own one. That's come up quite a lot. No, to be honest, no, I haven't. And part of the reason for that is I did 8 years in retail when I was much younger. Obviously, that was working for someone. Well, not obviously, but that was working for someone else. Obviously, if I did open a shop, it would be, you know, working under my own terms. I found out a long time ago that I am not. I am not a go-getter. I am very much a doer. I would like to think of myself very much as a worker drone with the ability to think for myself. I think that's probably the best way of putting it. Yeah, I work much better when I'm given work to do. Go away, do this, come back for more when you've done it. That's how I work. I'm just not a go-getter. Now, arguably, if you're setting up your own shop, there is an element of the go-getting sort of sense is how well you put stuff out there. And in the current day and age, as long as you're relatively clued up with your social medias and things like that, and have a website, you know, there's a reasonable way that you can sort of get yourself out there with not much outlay. But as far as setting a shop up and stuff, though, you know, I mean, no. I mean, part of me thinks it would be good, but then again, I know a lot of people who, you know, do and have worked in the drum retail industry, and you know, especially the current circumstances, it doesn't take a genius to work out that it's bloody hard. And if I ever did do anything like that, it would be much more as a sideline rather than anything else, because I just wouldn't be able to make the leap from full-time employment to relying on that sort of thing. But as far as buying and selling and knowing the value of gear, yeah, I mean, that's something I actually do take an interest in. Possibly not quite so much in the last few weeks, because I've been trying to wean myself away from it. But yeah, I mean, I have said previously, you know, I do look at eBay a lot. I do try and gather some level of sort of understanding of pricings and things like that. I like to think that I'm relatively sort of ballpark on things. But then again, sometimes, you know, you never really know. Sometimes you can always find something that'll, you know, it can completely take you by surprise. But, you know, for the most part, I'd like to think that I'm relatively ballpark. I mean, if people do ask me for sort of rough values on things from time to time, I do my research. Before I give any answers, generally. But yeah, I think I'm relatively ballpark. Is there a particular brand that tends to stand out above all others, in which quality and sound stands out as superior? You know what? At the risk of upsetting people, of which I don't intend to, you know, I have a lot of I have a lot of drums made by one particular manufacturer who I have problems with their newer stuff, not their older stuff, which is why I would never buy any of their newer stuff again. And that was a lot down to their fact that they couldn't get their quality up to a reasonable standard, where I had like over the course of a very short space of time, I had numerous issues with drums turning up to me that hadn't been finished properly, or had been damaged at manufacturer, or been damaged in transit, or in one particular instance, a supposedly handmade drum turned up to me with the where the shell had been routed for an inlay. Basically, some of the sawdust hadn't been cleared off before it had then been lacquered on a supposedly handmade drum, you know. So I mean, I've never had any problems with Craviotto. I would imagine there are probably quite a lot of smaller drum builders, because they have that personal connection with the instrument that they're making. And they are their own QA and QC. I imagine that, you know, I imagine probably the standard is quite high for, you know, a lot of these guys. Obviously, you do have off days. I mean, you look at Ludwig and stuff. You know, they were famous for like you know, you've got a Monday morning or Friday afternoon 400, and you say that, and most people that have been around for long enough will know exactly what you mean. And so the thing is, you know, the big manufacturers aren't they don't. I mean, they fall foul of poor QC as much as anyone else. And whilst Ludwig probably have sorted that issue out, but obviously the other brand certainly hadn't. The last time I bought one of their new drums, but as far as a particular brand, well, as I said, I've never had any problems with Craviotto. Funny enough, I do remember, and I'm Mike Fox. I'm looking at you, mate. If you see this, I remember being in my local drum shop, which is Wembley Drum Centre. Well, actually, technically that's not true, but it's my longest standing drum shop. And I remember there was a Craviotto snare which Mike took a black Sharpie to. I don't know whose the drum was or whether or not it just come into the shop, but I remember watching as Mike drew all these circles over the imperfections or something that was wrong with this shell. And this is going back a very long time. I will say a very long time. I mean, probably better part of 20 years, give or take, But I remember that happening, and I'm absolutely sure that was a Craviotto. But that was the only time I've ever heard of any issues with them. So, I'm going to stick with Craviotto. Let me say. Let me see. Oh, right. I'm reading these off my laptop, by the way. So, okay. You know what? I am, mate. I'm terrible with names, but Fabio. It would be nice to see you do some Slinger videos, or are you not a fan of their drums? Now I know someone actually answered this, but I will clarify. So I have a Slingerland kit. To the best of my knowledge, I've actually done a video on it. I know someone did say that I have. I have certainly done a video on the artist snare drum. No, I did actually, at the point I did the artist video, and in fact the kit video as well, I did have 3 artist snare drums. Now I subsequently PX'd one. I PX'd the sort of bluey green one back in 2019 for the Q plate snare drum, which is down on the floor there. And because there was no point in having 3 of them, and I never played it, so it was ridiculous. Just having the drum here for the sake of having the drum there, so I got rid of it. So I still have 2. I have one that matches the kit, which is Oyster Pink Pearl, and the other one was the original one I got, which is in I think it's Black Diamond Pearl. And I won't get rid of that simply because it just has some very fond memories for me. But I have nothing against Slingerland drums at all. I just really don't do vintage anymore. I still have some vintage drums. As I said, I've still got the kit. I will never be parted from that kit either. It's a lovely set of drums, even though it's a 13-inch rack tom, which is not my favourite rack tom size. I love that rack tom. I love that kit. But I just not very vintage anymore. I'm kind of like whatever the gap is between I don't know what we're calling it these days. Not vintage and not new. Whatever is in the grey bit in the middle. That's kind of where I like. I like stuff from the 80s, the 90s. Well, from the 80s up to now, really. But I've got a lot of drums from the sort of the 80s and the 90s, really, because that was when I sort of first started getting interested in drums, and I just really enjoy that period. Okay, moving on to the Instagram questions. Right, Charlie Smith. Now, I will preface this by saying that I talk to Charlie all the time. Like regularly, and if I even spoke to him today. Here's a toughie. If you came across one of your holy grail kits that you don't already own, what other kit would you sell to make room for it? And this is where he's added a caveat, because he knows my how my brain works, and no, adding a shed loft isn't an option, which actually would have been my answer. Or along those lines, extend the building, don't get rid of stuff. Okay, so one of my Holy Grail kits, I think at the moment, the most Grail kit that I could think of is the Pearl Custom Z. I've said that many times. If I was able to buy one, if I saw one and I was able to buy it, because they don't tend to come up very often, if I had to bump something, oh bloody hell. I'm just having a look round. You know what? I think that the answer to that would be the Heyman, which virtually none of you will ever seen, because I've never featured it on the channel, despite the fact that I've owned that kit for 21 years. I've never ever, in 8 years of doing this, I've never once had it on the channel. I don't even think I've put a picture up of it. I mean, I've got pictures. I haven't got many pictures of it because I don't use it very often. It's a 30. It's right. So technically, it's 13, 13, 16, and a 26 by 14 inch kick drum. Now, I got that very literally. The guy I got it off, who I haven't spoken to for a while, but I'm still sort of in contact with him. I spoke to him not too long ago. He got the kit, and when the kit's sort of maybe, I think it's a later Heyman, and I think I remember dating it between sort of about 71 and to 75, something like that. So it's almost as old as me. And I can't remember where John got it from, but when I got it from John, he had basically literally taken the whole thing apart. All the nut boxes and the screws and everything were in jam jars where he'd been cleaning them, and I've still got the parts for the extra 13 in the same jam jar somewhere. But he'd taken the whole lot apart to clean it. I was never ever going to play two 13-inch rack toms, so there wasn't much point in me putting that one back together. So I always used the 13 and the 16, and I've got to say, I still love, I don't know what it was, but there was something about that 16. It was one of my favourite floor toms. I think it may have just been one of those fluky things you get where the two heads just happen to work together really well. It just sounded excellent. I mean, the 26-inch kick drum I did actually have out. I was going to use it on a recording thing at the end of 2018, and it just never happened. So I haven't played it. It's in the other room. The actual toms, I think there's one of them's floating around up there. I don't quite know where the floor tom is, but you know what? I think that, Charlie, that would probably be the answer, is the Heyman kit, because I couldn't bear to part with anything else. Everything else, all the other kits in here, well, actually, technically, or maybe the Tama Swing Star, which is strangely another kit you'll never have seen, because and I've had that kit. Today is the 21st of February. I got that kit probably 2 months ago, and I have literally not yet been able to set it up and play it. So that's a personal first to me there as well. So it would either be the Swing Star, but just virtually I bought that kit for a bit of a giggle more than anything else, and because it had kind of cool sort of Copeland-esque type sizes. You know, they're trad sized toms really. So either the Heyman or the Swing Star. Actually, no, I think at a push, I'd probably say the Swing Star, because I haven't had that one for 20 years. But Charlie, that was an awesome question, mate. And it's really annoying that you knew my brain that well to add the caveat. So you have to keep one kit, one wood. Oh, sorry, this is Dunk Two Dogs, dude. You have to keep one kit, one wood snare, one metal snare. What are they? You know what? Oh. Right, so I'll go with the snares. The snares are slightly easier. The metal snare would be the AK nickel over brass, the AK Craviotto nickel over brass, 14 by 6.5. the one that's worth a phenomenal amount of money now, not through any of my doing, but the wood one would be the 14 by 5.5 timeless timber Craviotto. The kit, oh god, that's a horrible one. I'm going to say the Tama Slp walnut, mostly because of the sizes. Because the Star Walnut is 10, 12, 16, and I much prefer those sizes over the 13, 14, 16 that I have on the Craviotto. Even though the Craviotto kit would probably be, by virtue of the fact it is larger, more versatile, I will go with the Star kit on this occasion. So, but mate, that was actually a tough question. Dave Sanderson in New Zealand. Hello, mate. I'm unsure what you have in the way of cast bronze drums, but I'm doing slow research currently on what's needed to recreate an 8-inch Sonar drum, seeing as I'm unlikely to ever find an HLD 590 using a Duluth shell and Sonar fittings a la the DCP 10th anniversary drums. And if you haven't seen those, go away and find that video. Drum Centre of Portsmouth. There was a cracking video, and they were cracking drums as well. I can't find much info on the bearing edges, but particularly the snare beds of cast bronze snare drums. Most wisdom says sharp 45 edges, but I am blind on what to do for snare beds. Any clue from any of your snares would be welcome. Mate, that's a tough one. I've always found, I like, well, as might be evidence of the fact all the stuff you can see in the background. I do like having arguably the right tool for the right job, and that's kind of how my brain works. So instead of having one like 402 or 400 that would do many things, I would just go just have many drums. I tend to if I want a sort of a more vintagey type sound and feel, I would probably go for anything that had like a rounded bearing edge, or the equivalent of the Craviotto baseball bat, or the Slingerland is the same thing. So basically, it's kind of like imagine that's a sort of a flat edge, so you get more head contact. But then again, if I was hard pushed to say you have to have one thing, I would probably go with a more modern sort of 45 edge for that. But yes, I think if it was a metal drum, actually, to be honest, I would just go for the 45s anyway. It's just that would be my preference anyway. I think for me, metal drums, I would prefer a sharper edge anyway, full stop. But I'm blind on what to do for snare beds. Snare beds, you've got some of the DW stuff that I've got has got such a gradual bed that you can't even see it. Or certainly some of the DWs that I've had are like that, have been like that. I like the thought of being able to have the facility to put 45s on if I want. So I personally like I think a fairly gradual bed that's wide enough to accommodate 42s, but it's not so tight. It's not so tight an edge that you physically have to really look for it. So something that's obvious and quite wide, but gradually tapered. I'm not sure that actually makes too much sense. Dave, if that doesn't make any sense, mate, just message me again. Tell me that I'm an idiot, and I'll try and be more eloquent with that. But yeah, I would go for anything that's wide enough with 42s. If you look at some drums like the Dinettes generally, or a lot of the Dinette drums that Ron does, have a very, very clear, very, very obvious snare bed. And in fact, the Ochiltrees are the same, especially the Peisty 2002. If I can remember, I'll slap a photo up of the edge of that. It's a very, very clear it's incredibly defined bearing edge and an incredibly defined snare bed as well. Although on the 2002 it's quite a narrow one. And in fact, I'm gonna. Oh my word! Oh, bloody hell! Here I am picking up the. Oh god! Yeah, that. Which weighs in excess of 30 odd pounds. So this is the other VK. This is the 13 by 7 VK. God, why am I waving this around? Which weighs 30 something pounds. I'm not putting that on. It genuinely is that heavy. I'm just having a look at the edge. I mean, the edge is Alan Van Cleef makes some fantastic drums. I've said that before. Here's some of his drums are some of the most engineered looking. This is the best I can do at this time, and it's about 11 o'clock at night. I'm lying. It's actually 10 to 12 at night, and that's the best I'm going to do. But very, very precise, very, very engineered drums and edges and hardware and everything. I'm just having a look at what Alan's done on this one. So this one's actually kind of. I'm looking at it. It sort of sits about there. It's this one's noticeable but gradual. And I could probably, this has got like 20s on it at the moment. I could probably fit 42s on here. I would personally, I think, maybe go for something slightly deeper. So I go for something that's not that's not so subtle that you can't see it, and not so obvious that you could see it from space. Somewhere in there. Right, Michelle from Canada. And Michelle's a fantastic metal drummer. It does some stuff that I could only ever dream of. Or maybe if I could, if I had 1,000 years to practice, maybe, then I'd be as good as you, mate. Have you got any Craviotto since Johnny passed? No, I don't think. Well, actually, I tell you what, I think possibly. I'd need to. I think the last one that I bought, the last Craviotto that I bought, was actually the titanium solitaire, the 14 by 6 titanium solitaire. So arguably it was a Craviotto badge drum, but he didn't make it. But I think I probably bought that around the time that he passed away. But no, I mean, for all intents and purposes, I haven't bought any Johnny made or touched signed drums since he's passed. I'm probably going to butcher your name, mate. I'm sorry. Iocane drummer. What kind of Peisty china is that behind you, and what does it sound like? Right, okay. That was actually in specific reference to the video that I was sat behind this kit, but it was different cymbals at the time, so I can answer that one very easily. It was this one. This is. Let me just have a look. So this would have been. So this is a Peisty sound formula. Not that you're going to be able to see that too well. This is a round logo sound formula. The serial number starts with 2. I bought this brand new, so this would be 92, 93-ish when the original round of sound formulas came out. It's actually a reflector as well. So it's an 18-inch sound formula reflector, thin china. And as far as what does it sound like, I'm just trying to think if I've actually hit it in any videos. If I can find out, a video where I've played it, I will mention it. But as far as without trying to take my finger off, or let's see if I can do this. Sounds something like that. I've got to say, actually, to be honest, it's one of my favourite chinas, which is the reason why I've still got it nigh on 30 years later after I bought it. Some fella called Ebenor Drums UK. I don't know him at all. But Matt, thank you for the snare drum and the sticks, by the way. So that's my friend Matt. Okay, yeah, he's actually very graciously. I'm not going to plug him too much, but like he very generously sent me this snare drum to check out. There you go, so you can see it without getting... No. So look at that. How hot is that drum? That's an Applewood snare drum from Canada. But Matt sent me those in. By the way, he also sent me some of these Todd Zuckerman Rock Maple signature sticks. And you know what? I've got little baby ass hands there. I've got smaller hands. Matt suggested these because they're a thicker stick, but because they're maple, they're a bit lighter. I know Todd Zuckerman's talked about that. But you know what? These fit nicely into my little hands. They feel really comfortable to play to. So Matt, thank you, mate. But to the question, what's your preferred shell material? Bugger. Right, as far as metal is concerned, probably brass. As far as wood is concerned, oh, that's a toughie, isn't it? You know what? I said to someone just today, I don't know how many maple snare drums I have. And I really don't. Well, having said that, though, literally, I turned my head just slightly, and I've got 3 birch kits within 2 feet, almost within touching distance. I've got 3 birch kits that I could touch. I've got a walnut kit there, and then basically everything, most of the stuff you can see there is either maple or birch. So let's say acrylic. No, it's not. Oh, you know what? I don't know. I mean, I think for me, I think everything has got its own virtues. But for me, I think I'm really after characteristics rather than specifics of a wood. So I'm after anything that will give me on an 8-inch tom, or anything between an 8 and a 12-inch tom. Or I say, actually, no, on an 8 and a 10-inch tom, I'm looking for clarity and definition. On a 12, 13 inch tom, I'm looking for good medium range and body. And then on a 14 and a 16, you know, on a 14 and 16, I'm looking for anything that will give me basically low end. So I think arguably, if I was going to design a kit, which technically I did with the SQ2, but if I was going to design a kit, I would go a little bit sort of all Danny Carey. One of his kits from the 10,000 Days period, the Sonar kit that he had designed. If you look at, and I think it was the 8-inch tom that he was using from recently as well. So the video that 10 million or probably 11 million of us have seen by now of Numa, the Vic Firth Numa video. If you look at that 8-inch tom, I think that's the one. It's something like 10 plies. The shell's like an inch thick. So if I was going to design a kit, I would probably do something like that. So I'd have 8 and 10-inch toms, really thick shells, so you get that high fundamental, and then I would probably graduate the toms down to quite a thin shell on the 14 and the 16, and somewhere in the middle for like a 12 and a 13. Yeah, I'm kind of avoiding the answer there, Matt. But I hopefully I answered the question. Yeah, I mean, I'm not so fussed about woods. As I say, brass. I think brass is just a good all-round material certainly for metal drums. I almost said wood drums then. For metal drums. So yeah. Although having said that, I do like aluminium a lot as well. In fact, oh, you know what? I'm going to change my mind. Aluminium. Yeah, for metal snare drums or metal drums in general, aluminium. Yeah, I've got a lot of brass, but I actually quite like aluminium probably more. So, yeah, there you go. Right, Will Taylor, hello mate. Which is your favourite out of your Bell Bronze snares? And can I borrow some of those Peisty prototypes you have? Yes, mate, you can borrow them. That's fine. I've known Will for a long time. And he's an absolute dude, and boy, can he do all that rudimental stuff well. Right. Favourite one. You know what, mate? I actually thought I've thought about this because I saw the question just after you asked it, and my answer is this, and this is the reason why Charlie Smith worded his question the way he did. I have basically favourite one would probably be the most meaningful one will probably be this one, actually. Oh God, what am I doing? Right, will be this one because it has my daughter's name. I'm going to say my daughter's name on it. Yes, it has. Right, yeah. You think I'd know, wouldn't you? Right, so I have 2 drums like this, yeah. And the reason why I had to check was that they are actually both different. So this one's got my daughter's name and her star sign on it, which I also have on my left arm. But it also has her handprint, not to scale. That was her handprint when she was even smaller than she is now. So I'd say my favourite, actual favourite, is probably this one because it's quite meaningful for me. You know, apart from the personalisation, which is something Alan does anyway, you know, free of charge, you can just ask him to personalise your drum in any way that he wants, and can reasonably replicate. And I absolutely do like that about the way Alan does things. Apart from the fact he's a damn nice man, and has built 2 drums for me. So that would be one of them. The other one would probably be the Peisty 2002. Simply because that was another one of the drums that I kind of thought that I would never end up owning, just like the Timeless Timber. I thought I would never ever own one, and hey, you know, I got lucky. And well, actually, you know, if you've seen the latest snare drum story that I put out this week, that was actually about that very drum, and yeah, it's just a drum that I thought I'd never have. So as far as meaningful is concerned, yeah, the VK. As far as sort of like playing and, you know, all the other stuff, it would be the Peisty. But that's a great question. Oh, Matt Butlin, hello mate. Have you ever bought a drum and then regretted it, as it wasn't as good as you thought it would be? Do you still own it, or have you passed it on? Mate, funny you should mention that. Right, so, yes. I mean, there's like everyone, okay, I've bought drums that I've kind of... I haven't sold a lot over the years, but I have sold some. The Omar Hakim I remember selling and then kind of regretted it a little bit. The 14x8 brass Tama... I kind of wish I hadn't. I sold it because basically I thought I couldn't get it was before I could really tune snare drums better than well, not as well as I can now, whether that's a good thing or not. But I think the obvious one there for me is the Keplinger, the AOT Keplinger that I had. I bought it, I played it, I did a video with it. It just didn't hit the spot for me, despite the fact it was kind of one of those fabled snare drums. I actually sold it recently to a very nice man I know, who also bought my Noble and Cooley Phil Collins snare. And I think, so yes, absolutely, it was the AOT Keplinger, which I had for probably about a year and a bit. I didn't really play it that much during that time. It was kind of just one of those things that I had because I thought it would be cool to have, and I thought I'd enjoy it. Turned out I didn't really sort of you know, get on with it so well. It sounded better after recording it actually than it did in the room, and I sold it to the person who has it now, who I think values it more than I do. But yeah, that literally happened about a month ago. So. Great question. Okay, so you're going to have to go with me on the slight change of things, because the card filled up on the camera, so sorry about that. But we're now on my phone, and that's cool. But so next question, mate. I'm sorry, I would completely butcher your name if I even tried it. So, but the question relates to my favourite bearing edges and what's my sort of favourite bearing edge on snare drums, and what's my thoughts on a rounded edge on a snare drum. So I kind of sort of I've answered this already, but I'm very much, as I said before, it's sort of a right time and place and right thing for the job. I've talked a lot in these videos about sort of vibe of things, and that means sort of quite a lot to me in that respect. So if for example, so I have two Club Custom snare drums here, and they're both actually set up slightly differently. They basically both have. I mean, the snare side's the same. The snare wires are the same. Funny enough, obviously it's the same shell. They only the one snare drum size, but one's got an Evans UV1 on, and the other one's got a UV2 on. So single ply head, double ply head. But they've got sort of a kind of from memory they've kind of like not got the sharpest of edges on them. Reason I mention that is because they're set up slightly differently. So I've got them so I would, you know, sort of set up to do slightly different things and obviously sound slightly differently. If I was going to do, if someone called me up and said, really want you to come on record on this this sort of Motown track that we're recording, I would go probably for a wood snare drum with a rounded or a baseball bat type edge. And for me, just the concept of that really starts off with the vibe and the thought and the setting behind what am I actually going to be playing. So obviously that's sort of a Motown thing. Most people get the reference. If you just say sort of Motown type sort of sound and vibe, people will understand what that means. And just selecting the right drum for me is the first part of the process. It mentally puts me into the right place. So in that context, I would absolutely go for something that's older, either physically older, so I would dig out one of the few vintage drums that I have still, and not all of them have that rounded edge or a baseball bat edge, but I would go for either an older drum or something with that kind of edge design on it, because as I said, it just really puts me in the right frame of mind and the right mood for that. But I would try and avoid anything with a sort of a 45 or a 60. I mean, maybe a 60 would be okay, but anything with a 45 or shallower sort of edge on it, you know, anything that's sort of too pointed, you know, it's a bit too much of a sort of an attacky sound. Really, I would be looking to get sort of a more of a sort of a body type sound. I'm very much the right tool for the right job. So I have drums that have, you know, obviously sharper edges. I have drums that have a rounded edge. I have drums that have the baseball bat type edge as well. And I've got some Craviottos with, I mean, the baseball bat type edge, I think is me making a generic out of the Craviotto term. But yeah, I mean, I like rounded edges and baseball bat edges for the right thing. You know, if it was for the ska gig that I do regularly, wouldn't be the right thing. If it was a blues gig or something like that, then absolutely I might do that. As I said, it just really, I just time and a place for everything. That's probably the best way I can put it. Time and the place for everything. So yes, absolutely, there is a time and a place for it in my life. Probably just not very often. Maybe more likely to be in here, actually. If I was recording any tracks, I would probably look to be more picky about it in that situation. Okay, so next question is from my friend Roy. Roy's actually the manager of my almost local drum shop. There is actually one nearer now, but you know, that'll probably... Wembley will always be. I've been going to Wembley Drum Centre for like 27 years now. So, but he asks about would I ever like to explore the wonderful world of vintage, like Luddies and Rogers and things. So there was a point where I actually did sort of go down the vintage route, like I think that probably a lot of us do. The reason why I stopped going down the vintage route, I think that was really at the time I decided that I kind of wanted to explore Craviottos and actively collect Craviotto. So that was kind of the point where I decided, and the motivation for that was, as I've said before, actually, there was no point in really trying to collect and look at vintage drums, because basically the whole vintage drum thing has been completely sewn up by, you know, a handful of guys. Mike Curotto being probably the main one, with however many snare drums he's got now. I mean, 6, 7, probably 7. It's probably in the 700 snare drum range now, at least, I would imagine. Makes me look like a complete chump. And then you got Bunny Carlos. If you wanted Billy Gladstone drums, you had Chet Falzarano. I'm sure Rob Cook has got quite a lot of them. You know, there was only a handful of guys basically who had all the really nice sort of vintage drums, and I thought, well, there's no really point in trying to pursue that avenue, because, you know, being in the UK as well, not that buying stuff from abroad, and, you know, most notably the US, is the hardest thing in the world. It's obviously it's not. I've bought plenty of drums. I've been floating the American economy way more than I've been floating the British one for a long time. Yeah, it was just it was that. I mean, there was just no, you know, you can buy nice vintage drums, and it doesn't have to be completely collectible. It doesn't have to be flash. It doesn't have to be anything. And I completely acknowledge that. But I think at the time I was just looking to collect, and I was looking to collect specifically, you know, well, as it turned out, Craviotto. So that's where I went and focused. I still do retain some vintage drums. As I said, I have my Slingland kit. I don't know if the Heyman kit I mentioned would. I mean, personally, obviously, the further we are by every day, getting further away from that point in time, like, you know, the end of the 60s. But for me, a vintage kit is 1960s or, like, you know, further on. 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s. That to me is vintage. Then, you know, you've got the more sort of modern era, the last 20 years, and then whatever the hell you want to say within the, you know, the 30 years in between that, of which I have a lot of drums from the 80s and the 90s. But drums from the 80s and 90s certainly aren't vintage. I don't know if we're calling 70s drums now vintage. I'm not even sure I've already got any drums from the 70s, actually. I'd have to go and have a dig through. But I mean, I've got stuff. My oldest snare drum is actually 100 years old, give or take, which is weird to say, because I've had it for probably 15, 16, 17 years. I think I may have done it on the channel. It's an old lead. Well, obviously it's old. It's a stupid thing to say. It's a brass leady. I don't know what the model is. It's a 6-lug drum with clip. Single flange. Well, not even single flange. It's just a hoop. Clips on it. Very delicate little strainer. It's from the 1920s. As far as I know, anyway, it's still the 1920s. I've only ever used it on one gig, and that was a production of Bugsy Malone. So, strangely, it was absolutely period correct. I mean, the rest of the kit wasn't, but, like, the snare drum was absolutely period correct. You know, that's my oldest drum. Although it's not a very practical drum, because obviously that sort of thing is just it sounds all right for what it is, but it's not, doesn't stand up contemporary way in any shape or form. I think the next oldest drum I have is a 1958 WFL. I think that's mahogany, actually. That's a sort of a faded white marine pearl. I did have I think I've got a Lady and Ludwig from 1954, which is I think a maple 14x4, and I mean again that's a nice drum. Kind of only does the one thing, but it's, you know, I mean I do have vintage stuff. As far as exploring sort of vintage kits is concerned, you know, if I had the room and the funds, I would love to get an older Gretsch kit. I mean, if we're going for a push, I would love to get an older Gretsch kit. In fact, the video I put out just today, where I was talking about the Gretsch Brooklyn, I mentioned Charlie Watts's kit, the natural maple kit that he's got, and I would love something like that, an old Gretsch round badge, even if it's got some scratches on it or whatever, or it's all dirty. Just the vibe of that would be fantastic. Finding that stop sign, you know, I mean, I know that's sort of what, late 60s, 1970s, not quite the same, but you know, something like that. And the same with Ludwig actually. You know, I just think that the thought of a nice old Luddy kit in a sparkle, in a sparkle from the 60s, that'd be fantastic. That really would. So it's 12, 16, 22, say 22, 14. That'd be fantastic. I mean, I genuinely would love that. I don't know when the hell I'd use it, but I would love it. It'd be, what a fantastic thought, you know. But it's really, it's not that I wouldn't want to pursue that. It's not that I haven't pursued that, but it's just, I think really the reason I didn't pursue it any further than I did was, as I said, because, you know, all the decent drums have pretty much been taken. But Rogers, certainly brands though, Rogers, that was interesting you mentioned that one. I do have a Rogers drum. I have a Rogers Dynasonic actually. I have one of the reissue ones though, in red sparkle. I did it on the channel a while ago, a few years ago when I bought it. Probably the most sensitive snare drum that I have. You can blow on it and get a sound out of that, just by virtue of the Dynasonic and how it's all set up and it's worked. But as far as, I had an old Rogers kit actually, but it was one of the UK ones. Had that for a while, loaned it to someone, realised I wasn't going to play it, sold it to someone up in Lincolnshire, you know, probably 15 odd years ago. Don't regret getting rid of it either. I mean, to be honest, I mean, Rogers is, for me, Rogers is the American made drums. It's not the stuff that was made outside of the US. So you know, it was Rogers by name, but I don't really class it as a Rogers kit. I would like to go back and get some more vintage stuff, I think, you know, but it would have to be quite specific. Rogers doesn't really interest me. I think really for vintage stuff, you probably can't beat old Luddies and old Gretsch, and that's certainly what I would like to get. Last question, or rather the first question that was asked, Christian Smoo, and it was a joking question really, and to be fair, it was a little bit of it was a bit of an in-joke really, between a group of us. So, and that was, did I ever want a drum with sliders? So that's actually reference to the Randy May snare drum, or Randy May designed snare drum. It's like the DWEQ drum, I think it was called, which is an interesting design, which I am reliably informed. Well, you know what? I was reliably informed by a bloke whose opinion, if he told me the sky was blue, I'd go out and check for myself twice. He told me that the actual design was originally, or the original design concept for, you know, the EQ drum, the sliders, was actually won by the Brazilian company Odori. He told me that they came up with it first. And if you're not familiar with that concept, basically, the shell, obviously it's a regular drum shell, but it's adjustable. The shell is adjustable, and it has little sliders on it where you can open or close parts of the sort of, I suppose the best way of putting it is this: the shell has holes cut in it, and then a sort of inner panels which you can then move around and adjust by way of a slider. And obviously adjust the sound of the drum that way. Interesting concept. I think there's probably a reason why it hasn't caught on. But he has one of those drums, and I know that he loves it and treasures it very much. And if you ever wanted to buy it from him, I'm sure he would be loath to sell it because he enjoys it that much. But I think that's all of it. So look, thank you very much. I hope that was fun. I mean, I kind of enjoyed answering those. So I know that was a long video. I hate to think how long it was, but you know, thank you. I hope that was fun. I hope that was entertaining. We can do another one sometime. But anyone, if anyone's got any questions off the back of all of that, if you've actually made it that far, this far, thank you. My hat's off to you. And that was like pretty dire in itself, wasn't it? But thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. See you later.